beloveds, beloved bringers of change, beautiful soul family. Good morning from Australia. I am KIOTIS, and I'm a conduit for the Council of Five, KIOTIS, as well as holding different templates and purified consciousness for the collective as a activator in my group directive. I am an activator to trigger and bring through higher expressions of truth. And this expression of truth is one that is following an urgent message from the council yesterday that was gifted to those ready to receive. And I have been speaking into this for the last couple of weeks. It's been surfacing in relation to the shifts that are taking place currently in relation to the reptilian mind, the reptilian consciousness and the reptilian agenda, infiltration and our own aspects of self that are playing out in these energies, and what is necessary. In this urgent message, I will recap very quickly that this coming few weeks, on the full moon this Friday, there will be a convergence that's taking place around many aspects of the world, with different leaders and beings that have received the message are anchoring in new levels of consciousness from different spaces and places throughout creation, and allowing the dormant cells that sit within the physical vessel to be activated and be reunited. So what that looks like in preparation is the clearing and the transmutation of lower vibrational energies, distortions, traumas, wounds that you may have within your field in the preparation to receive this higher consciousness, this purified consciousness. And what that is that we go through an activation process, a clearing process, and then a purification. So at the moment, we are moving through a clearing process, and the ones that are bringing in this purified consciousness are preparing themselves to be fully open to receive this purified consciousness, not only for themselves, but to bring it in for the collective whole and to anchor it into the earth grid, so that there's a shift in the consciousness of the collective whole and the molecular structure of the earth. What this means is that because it is specifically the reptilian consciousness that we are talking about, and this is lizard beings, this is draconians, this is dragons, this is gargoyles, this is many different derivatives of what this DNA looks like and has been spliced throughout different time and space dimensions. And the agenda of the reptilian is to keep you into a limited bandwidth. Now, whilst you're in a limited bandwidth, you're easily controlled and you're kept in the illusion of the matrix, which keeps you in suppression from knowing your infinite capacity and ability to return and connect to source and become superhuman in physical vessel. That is what the human identity has been created of. It is a consciousness form that was created in the original point of separation from the original beings at the time of Lumeria, where the Lumerian soul group and the original mission, instead of staying in the unified directive of the goal for the human race, which was to bring heaven on earth, there was misalignments, miscommunications, and inability to master matter at that point in time, that these soul groups started to have different points of view, which is the whole beauty of the human race. These different points of view started to create cracks and space, which then allowed for infiltration. Now, what I'm saying here is a lot bigger than what I'm saying about Lumeria. That was the original severance and allowing point for infiltration on Earth back as far as the original days. And this severance is when we choose to have a weak field because we're not choosing unified thought. We're projecting, we're rejecting, we're not seeing someone else's viewpoints, we're not meeting in the middle. Instead of having one collective middle way, okay, I can see your point of view, I can see your perspective, I can see why this makes you feel this way. How can we bring my directive? And I say that with a lot of energy because I was a big part of the directive of the fall of Atlantis, the fall of Lumeria, and my team spread off and went off to create Atlantis. So my soul group effectively separated, and in the very point of the initial disagreements, what happens was our energetic fields as a collective whole became weak, and that's when we allowed for consciousness expressions that were not in alignment with our original mission or unity to come into that space. Now this is a collective expression, but this happens on an individual point where your own mind's consciousness is not choosing unified thought, where your own mind's consciousness is not choosing a point of love, not seeing a point of compassion. You're projecting that other people are doing X, Y, and Z. You're not able to take self-responsibility and accountability for your own choices, to meet someone in the middle way, to lean in, to lean in, to lean in. And when that leaning in takes place for all that is possible, you've got 2 points of reference in every moment, is to open to love or to close to love and to source. And that is as simplistic as I can give it in all expressions of these teachings and these remembrances. In every moment you have a choice to be unified or separate, unified or separate. And we are choosing the route of unification now. And so when we don't choose that, we open our energetic field, our collective consciousness, our soul group, the quantum field for infiltration. And this is where the bandwidth of the individual and the collective whole is limited, because when there is infiltration, that is the infiltration is what brings in, say, frequencies, right? We are only at the effective frequency. That's why speaking out for me, I don't have fear. People have spoken into, so being a incarnate of the Elohim, having the original markings of a healer, this is something that people don't share. The original markings of a healer were held on Yeshua, Buddha, many. We've been hunted throughout time and space as the legend of the parakeet, and the reason for that is based on the genetic coding that is within this vessel is imperative for the collective consciousness shifts, and it's a precious commodity to those that are not choosing this. Our blood is sacred, our blood is the pure chi, the Koreana. And what happens is that there's a fear based on these narratives that there is the prosecution and that we will be hunted. And this is inaccurate. This is not the truth. The truth is that if you're in alignment with Source and you're checking in every moment where you're not choosing unification, then you are subjective to infiltration. Yet nothing can hurt you, nothing can attack you, nothing can cause you damage if you are fully connected into returning here, and coming home. Now, this is why collectively we are to choose this directive or goal as a whole. It's to come unified, to come into togetherness. This makes us strong. This brings us back into the vision for heaven on earth, not by spitting fire, not by projecting, not by claiming that one person is more conscious than another or that one spiritual path is more in alignment. Yet there is an awareness of how we can be self-responsible, see distortions within each other, because we all have blind spots whilst we are in a limitation of human mind and this separate experience. we are not always necessarily able to see the full truth because we have one lens of perspective. And this is why I communicate with KIOTIS. And KIOTIS is who is directing me to come and speak in this live in relation to what's taking place collectively, because they have a much broader expression of consciousness than what I do as an individual being. And that is my collective expression of truth that I can bring forth for a more unified expression of openness. And this is this is important for us to all recognize how this lays within our own consciousness, our family dynamics, our soul groups, our individual as a whole collective beings on this planet. So over the coming weeks, and it's important for me to clarify, as I'm not feeling that this is something that KIOTIS is going to speak into, as they have something that is more important to share. The Tiani is with the message that was brought through yesterday. If you have not seen it and received it, I would gently ask you to feel through your body in relation to whether or not you want to be aware of what is taking place and how you can effectively bring your awareness to yourself and others and the collective whole in oneness, so that we can move through these challenging times together. We are in a tipping point, and the tipping point is a point where, based on these new frequencies that will be brought in on this full moon, that and anchored into the collective and the consciousness of the earth, there is a shift in the consciousness. So there is a rapid fire expression of evolution that's taking place. And in this rapid fire expression, what happens is discord. And there is a point over the next coming weeks that the specific reptilian consciousness is no longer being able to hold life here. Now, this doesn't mean that our snakes and our reptiles and all of those beings are going to die, because our snakes and our reptiles and our animals of these on earth are not, they are the purified consciousness. They are not the distorted consciousness. You don't meet a lizard and say that it is a distorted consciousness, because an animal holds a more directive of pure source without the manipulation of mind. They receive the world differently. So the reptilian consciousness that will be obliterated and destroyed, and if we continue to listen and continue to meet our directives individually and together, is that this has to be obliterated and destroyed for us to move into a higher consciousness of expression, of more unity on earth, to come into spirit directive. Now, what that means is that the consciousness of the unpurified, the lower consciousness reptilian, the ones that are of the anti-consciousness agenda, the ones that are feeding off of our life force, are no longer able to contain life here, because our energy fields become stronger in our vibrational shift into a higher octave of expression. And as individuals at different points, and we come together and we're all choosing a higher frequency, this has a ripple effect throughout the field, and this becomes a strong, potent force field. That means that we are less able to be infiltrated, fed off, and siphoned of our energy. Now, the reptilian agenda, that is how they maintain life, is they siphon your life force energy. They have hooks, cords, threads, and different devices that go on in the unseen. And in the unseen, this is where they will take from you based on the weakening of your field. And so as your vibration shifts into a higher octave of expression over these coming weeks, and we hit this tipping point in the collective, there is going to be a collective whole a collective whole that has a force field around it. So we have individual protective fields, that's our auric field. We also have a collective protective field, that's our auric field. So the more that we move up in these evolutionary states, we are holding a protective field around those that are more vulnerable. Those are the ones that are being siphoned. For those of you that have grown up to beings over your bed, for you that you wake up every morning and you feel depleted, for those of you that are under psychic attack, these pieces, as we continue to evolve collectively, we are protecting those children, those unconscious beings that do not have this awareness of how to protect their field. So we are creating through our vibration protection from these lower consciousness, because as you come to a higher consciousness of expression, your lower consciousness comes to a point where it can no longer affect you. This is the bandwidth, right? So if you're sitting in a place of joy, you have a bandwidth above and a bandwidth below, and you can only be at the effect of energies that are just below your bandwidth. So you can bounce between a certain bandwidth, but you will no longer meet the depths of specific energies in the effect of your own individual expression. So as we shift over these coming weeks, what that will do is that will mean that the beings that are choosing to siphon life force and to take the energetic power and the chi as their food source are no longer able to do that. They do that through the fear narrative. That is the reptilian brain. The fear narrative is your survival. This is the control structure of the earth. And as we shift out of survival mechanisms, as we shift out of fight, flight, freeze responses, as we shift out of trauma, we're able to shift into higher levels of receivership. And receivership being that of source creator. This receivership of source energy through you is what is gifting you the opportunity to realize that you're safe and protected, which is why I do not fear speaking into these things. It's why this is my directive, because I have remembered this to be true. I have remembered this to be so. And the moments in time that we can reference throughout history where there has been prosecution, where there has been moments in time where specific individuals' lives have been taken that have been leading us into source connection. And I honor all of those beings and their individual missions and collective missions and their directive. The times on earth have shifted, and at that point in time there was so much that one individual could hold in light in the truth of remembrance. And what happens is when you can only hold so much light because you have not got a big enough support network to anchor, you are then also at the effect of infiltration or the prosecution wound. And the prosecution wound is also there based on the moments of time where mind or ego come in and weaken our field. And it's a moment in time for us to return to our source connection and be fully protected. And I will use Yeshua's resurrection as this reference point, because Yeshua continued a path that led him into the den of the demon, we'll say, and to bring light to the shadows, not only within himself, but within the experience of what took place in history. And through his crucifixion, he moved through a process of full returning to source. This is where you remember that God is your savior. And this is why the teachings of Yeshua is, yes, he's up until this point of resurrection and becoming Christed in the resurrection of his being. He was not at that point of the transcendence of mind. Yes, he was a beautiful truth speaker. Yes, he walked a path that many are terrified of. And he did this in the knowing of what God spoke through him, so that he could come into that full surrender and create a message that is not just metaphorically true, but was a physical truth of creation also. This is what we are. We are infinite beings with infinite healing capacities. We have the ability with our mind, with our hands, to move matter, to spread the waters, to turn water to wine. This is already a possibility in the now moment to start to transcend time and space. So as you remember these amazing beings and what they have come to show you, this is where we start to understand and understand from the cognitive mind the bandwidth and the importance of the bandwidth, and the importance of not just seeing how to expand our bandwidth, but also to see where our bandwidth is being restricted and where it is being limited in limitation based on external influences. As we move through this shift in the bandwidth, as we move through, there are going to be the surface of many traumas and many aspects of consciousness that have come into the field. Your energy body is not just you. Your energy body holds many implanted thought forms, toning devices, satanic imprints, past life memory, holographic mimicry, cloned memories. There is so much added into your energetic field that until we have the capacity in our own internal evolvement, or can be guided by someone who can take us into these points of consciousness within our being, they will be played out throughout our human experience as a rectification process. So that our bandwidth can increase. So we can choose to evolve through the mirrors of our human experience, in which can be quite challenging and painful, as the mirrors of our experience tend to be quite abrupt and cause quite a bit of suffering and pain, and we learn through the mirrors of pain rather than coming to a point of recognition internally to allow this bandwidth to improve and to rise. What we will move through in the coming times as this bandwidth increases is there will be hundreds of thousands of beings that are sitting on the tipping point that are going to go through a mass awakening. And this is not something that is necessarily to be seen from the joy, but also the catastrophic chaos that will be created from this, without the structures, without the frameworks, and without the ability to hold these erratic energies as they come into seeing the world in a new lens. If you take a time to step back and look into the moment of time that you awoke and what was taking place for you in your awakening in the dark night of the soul, how long that took, how confused you were, how your nervous system and your fight, flight, freeze response was keeping you alive based on this tipping point of consciousness within yourself. This is going to take place on a collective level of beings. This is dangerous, whilst also being the awareness to bring attention to love and groundedness for those that are well into their journey, to anchor the presence of peace, to anchor the presence of the I am in love and unconditional support energetically, so that we can hold the field as these structures come in, as this awareness is here, that it is not you and your individual journey, and it is not about the collective. It is simultaneously coexisting, and it is imperative for us to continue to see unification and to continue to come into our soul groups, our collective missions, whilst also walking our individual solidarity. So as these beings awaken, as they shift from mostly survival, a narrative of fear and disconnect, they will start to plug back in. Their cells will start to come online and their DNA will start to activate. This will also accelerate those that have been going through this process into things like Kundalini awakenings and into intense amounts of energetic shifts, where the evolution and the acceleration of our energetic field is going to increase. This creates the awareness of all of the distortion and chaos that's in the way. When individual beings start to collectively awaken, they start to see their trauma. They start to see where they have been lied to. They start to see the narcissism. They start to see the illusion. They start to see what this matrix, false matrix, imprisonment is, and what that holds. And that creates a sense of retaliation in the mind. So although this newly awakened energy is coming into a place of more spirit connection and seeing a greater truth, they are also going to be going through a point of extreme resistance. And this can create war. Because at this point, this is what our conspiracy theorists are, our activist energies, and the energies that are in a place of speaking out to fight against it's the remembrance of only enough information of truth that becomes rebellious and destructive in its nature. Whilst you are guiding individuals into this new way of seeing the world, it is to guide them into their heart space, to guide them into a perspective of seeing a more broad lens of awareness, so that their mind doesn't attach to the resistance that is created within the brain that wants to fight against the wrongness that they are starting to see, and to start to bring the awareness to these newly awakened and coming awakened beings to see that the resistance that they have in the world and the control structures is a mirror into their internal trauma and healing, and the ability to return into a alchemized, balanced place of connection within. I'm aware that KIOTIS has not had a chance to speak yet, and I have been speaking through my own monadic expression in all of the aspects that I have wanted to share in the relation to what has been moving through in the triggers. So as an individual being, I have received much deflections, projections and triggers in relation to what I speak, and the inability to be ready to receive my message. And I say that in the knowing of truth, because I am because I am the divine feminine Christed energy. I hold the codes of Yeshua. I am here to walk the path of this, and in this evolved state of what different saints the accordion have walked, there is a new level of expression of what evolution is required for us to evolve as a collective, which is where there has been some retaliation to past narrative attachments, original missions, to philosophies, to ancient ways, to modalities and ancient medicines, which all hold beauty, yet they are outdated. And I will continue to speak this because I know this to be true. If these were the ways, if these cultures were the ways in their original expressions, in their ancient teaching, without their evolvement, then they would be creating change now, and they are not. They are not. These modalities, philosophies, and different spiritual practices are going through an evolvement where it is required to bring through a higher octave of information and consciousness, to bring through new processes in alignment with these teachings, to see how different yogic teachings, different Ayurvedic medicines, different spiritual practices are showing the way, and yet they are not the way. And this is confronting for many who are still attached to the past. And this is to trigger you to recognize how much anger you may hold towards me in this moment, because my path is to trigger us into the alignment with the highest, divinest truth and path forward. This is my collective mission. I am the activator and the trigger of the highest path forward, which is one path, which means speaking into the discomfort, speaking into the attachments that our human collective hold, in the inability to be uncomfortable in finding new ways forward to create heaven on earth, to let go and evolve beyond what we have been, which is an individual piece as well. What have you been contracted to? What did you decide to do from your original mission? Have you released your attachments to your original mission? Have you been playing this out throughout incarnation cycles and have not evolved beyond your monadic expressions, your higher self? These are all aspects of consciousness. Until you return to source, there is always evolvement. Where are you sitting within your own attachments to a specific limiting bandwidth? As I feel that I have met the aspects of triggering points that I've been directed to in my individual mission, I will now tune into KIOTIS, even though I feel very uncomfortable doing this, as I never know what's going to come through. And this is the trust and surrender. So just taking some deep breaths into the body. So breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. Breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. Breathing in and breathing out. What we're guided here to speak into today is the inability that the human consciousness has to rectify and acknowledge their own distortions. The inability as a collective that continues the distorted expression of consciousness through the mind's receivership. What this means is that there is an inability to take control of the surrender into source, And whilst the control narrative of the reptilian mind continues to be at play, you control and dictate how you receive source. And this is here as a way to guide you into the aspect of being that you feel you are. And yet it directs you away from the essence of that which you are in the full receivership of what is possible for you, while you continue to dictate through mind rather than allowing for your expression of receivership to increase through all aspects of your being. And when we speak into the receivership, this is not just from points of higher consciousness, but through all elements of your molecular structure, through all aspects of your multidimensional expression, that you receive from the above, the below, and all directions of information source, that your bandwidth effectively is an orb of light, that as you limit your receiving through different directions of energetic manipulation through mind's perception, you are unable to receive the full truth of what is being gifted to you in every moment of the experience of humanity. Humanity is a broad spectrum of polarity until you can witness all aspects of the void into the highest point of space. This is your yin-yang energy in solid form. And as you continue to focus on one aspect of either masculine or feminine focus points, you miss the unification that creates the remembrance of source without separation, limitation, and dissecting your information stream into different forms of receivership. As you receive your bandwidth into the orb of expression of the infinite, unique expression of God Source Creator that you are, you will allow for this, you will allow for this information to be in full receptivity, to open you into the ability to share through being rather than speaking, through expressing rather than forcing, through the flow of the current of life force within you. Now, what we are bringing attention to is that as you understand that your bandwidth is not a band, but instead all of creation as the creator being that you are, without any limitation, as you are the source of the universe and all aspects of the mirrors in your life, that you effectively are God's source creator in physical form, that you will start to acknowledge and understand that the aspects of separation and limitation are of the making of self. They are the making of your own internal narratives, belief systems, core woundings, and the distorted, dense consciousnesses that you have rejected rather than seen in their wholeness. As you start to see wholeness in all aspects of light and dark being a spectrum of shade or color, you will start to identify with the acknowledgement that you are not separate from the void, nor are you separate from the point of space or anything in between, but you are all of this, and to start to reclaim those lost aspects that you rejected in a point of consciousness where you perceive to be something other than this. Currently, you are moving through a point within the spiritual community where you believe to be ascending into higher states of consciousness. This is a distortion in itself. The ascension is to come through you, through all directions of you, not to ascend into the higher dimensions whilst being in your physical reality. Your human experience is one of the most gifted experiences throughout this universe. It's where advanced beings come to share their mastery. It's where advanced beings come to remember and to gift this remembrance to the human race to evolve. It's where advanced beings are coming and no longer forgetting. And as this shift in consciousness takes place, the awareness that it is to bring information from all points of creation into one moment of experience, that is God Source Creator, becoming aware of God Source Creator in physical form through the mirrors of separation, to realize itself within one another. Then you are able to receive the awareness that there is no separation from those aspects of the underworld, the void, the inner earth, the density, and you are able to unify the descended aspects of yourself into the center of your heart. For as long as we have communicated with Gaia, we have spoken of mind-heart coherence and the receivership of truth being through the heart and not through higher mind. Higher mind will distort the channel. This allows for false light narratives and for the agendas of what continue to be at play. The false light narrative would desire and does desire to have the human race as their own collective experiment. The beings that are being received through anything other than the highest point of source connection have their own agenda. They are here to create love and light, yes, but they are also in the rejection of anything other than peace, harmony, and joy. And they are still polarized within their own collective constellations. This is a part of the galactic trauma that is being witnessed and observed in your current collective consciousness, to see where you maintain the false light narrative and where you maintain the rejection of the choosing of life in different form. As you hold all aspects of these within yourself, and without the purification and unification of these elements, you will reject your life experience, and you will reject Source from moving through you freely and through an expression of truth in all aspects of your individual experience. As we remind you of this, as you receive this through the feeling of the heart and the vibrational resonance of truth that is expressed at, you will start to bring awareness to those that do not speak from this point of vibrational frequency. They may speak the words of a higher mind. They may speak the words of what seduces your egoic expression of denial. Yet they do not speak truth. There are many false prophets. There are many false guides. And all yet they are imperative to the collective remembrance, as they will guide you off path until you realize within yourself that you have been led astray, and you reconnect to your own empowered source connection, where the memory and the information holds true. When you return to self and are guided inwardly, you will always be redirected into your highest path forward. This evolutionary process takes as long as you choose. It takes as long as you continue to detour from the messages within, to distrust, to doubt, and to create a narrative that you must be crazy. That you continue to hesitate The time of hesitation in your internal remembrance is based on your mind's objection to it. And as you continue to release the objection and wholeheartedly come into the surrender of the whispers, you will find your path, and the path of the collective whole synergizes into a more clear timeline forward that effectively is more synergistic for all, including us, as we sit in this collective directive of a higher guided council. We are continually realigning the roles and the positions and the mission, directive, individual purposes to ensure that the movement forward is easeful and that there are just the right individuals to come into your trajectory at exactly the right time that you require this information to move forward. However, if you choose your source connection, your source directive as the knowing of that which you hold, and you hold true to it, it will bring you forth into the transcendence of your truth and the remembrance of who you are. Gratitude and acknowledgement for KIOTIS and their directive to guide me and all beings. Gratitude and acknowledgement for myself. For trusting and surrendering. Over and over again. And gratitude and honor for every one of you that continues to show up here for yourself. And for all. I honor you, I see you, I love you. If this message rings true and it feels as though you would like to give this to others, please tag, share. Or voice your own expression of truth of this to as many beings as you can in alignment with